Good evening, everyone. Co-Chair Liu, Chair Benson will not be able to attend the meeting again tonight. Could you please start the meeting, and will you be able to run us through the agenda tonight?
I think she's muted.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, very good. I was having a little connectivity problems here. Let me see if I can get a video working. Start video. Video, let's see. So video, can you turn on the video? Start video. Okay, not able to get video.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, we have it now. Okay, wonderful. All right, we now have it. That's from my ECV background, but we'll just ignore that for the afternoon. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the July 25th meeting of the Indio Sustainability Commission. Our first item will be call to order and roll call. So let's go ahead and do that. I think we have a new member with us. So for our roll call, we will start with Chair Morgan Benson.
He's absent today.
Absent. Okay. Vice Chair Anita Liu, I am here. Commissioner Miguel Romero.
Here. Good evening, everyone.
All righty, great. Commissioner Jerry Tack.
I'm here.
All righty, and welcome Commissioner Pete Chris.
Present, good evening.
Good afternoon. All righty, so that's our roll call. And then our next item is our Pledge of Allegiance. So pretty brief. We can just get started and speak jointly. You can turn on your mics. Let's see if folks have their mics on. You might want to unmute for this part of it, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Are you able to unmute Commissioner Romero and Commissioner Chris? All righty, thank you. All righty, so let's go ahead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
The United
States of America and
to the republic for which stands one nation,
under God,
undivided,
indivisible, with liberty
and
justice
for
all. Okay, thank you. All right.
Gotta love Zoom.
Okay, all right, we got through that. Okay, so agenda item number 3 is, and good afternoon, Sarah and Ms. C. I see another person with us today on the commission. Presenting the third agenda item is public comments for items not on the agenda. So Sarah, I'll let you take that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. There are no public comments.
Okay, righty. So we're moving along pretty quickly. The next agenda item is commissioner comments. And there's a welcome to our new commissioner, Pete Chris. And Commissioner Chris, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'll keep it under 45 minutes. I know time is
Okay.
important. My name is Pete Chris. I'm so thrilled to join you all. I've heard so much wonderful things about all of you. So whoever you're paying, definitely the money's paying off. But I'm so happy to serve on this board. I am a local businessman here. I am the managing partner for First Call Security and Sound and the managing partner for Alpha Commerce Consultants. So sustainability and viability in the valley is very, very important to me and my family. And I thank you all for being so welcoming to me.
All righty. Okay, very good. Sarah, any other comments to add to that? Sarah, any comments to add?
No, I believe that's the
Okay.
only thing we have from the staff side. If any of the commissioners have anything they'd like to add to the meeting now, or any comments, that would be fine.
No, I don't. Commissioner Tack, Commissioner Romero, Commissioner, no? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the minutes for our last meeting in May. We did not have a meeting in June. And the minutes for the last meeting were attached to the agenda. So hopefully folks have had a chance to take a look at that. And we'll just do a roll call or vote on approving the minutes from the last meeting. So go ahead.
Just a point of order,
Yes.
Vice Chair, if you don't mind, asking for a first and second motion, and then I'll do the roll call.
Okay.
Okay, so I make a motion, we accept them as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Vice Chair Liu,
Approve.
Commissioner Romero,
Approve.
Commissioner Tack,
Approve.
Commissioner Chris,
Abstain due to non-participation.
meetings pass.
All righty. So I turn it over to you on the next agenda item, Sarah. Please go ahead.
We are lucky to have Michelle with us tonight. She's going to talk about some of the programs, or basically the Indio Sub-Basin Water Management Plan, and give an update on that, and just kind of give us an idea on what's going on in the water world from the IWA perspective. And can we pull up that? Thank you.
So good evening, commissioners. I first wanted to thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to be able to have this opportunity to kind of talk to you about kind of regionally, the Indio Sub-Basin Water Management Plan update, as well as just generally the water supply in the valley. My name is Michelle C., and I'm the Administrative Services Manager with the Indio Water Authority. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, I just prepared this presentation to kind of look at kind of big picture, what we've all been seeing and hearing as it relates to the drought, water supply in general, and kind of hone in specifically, what the water resources are, the regional water planning efforts that are in play, and then ultimately conservation. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you've seen images before, but again, to kind of paint the picture, so to speak, I have images before you. You've probably seen it on the news and on social media, pictures of what Hoover Dam looked like back in 2016, and then the lowering water levels in April of 2022. And so essentially the question asked is, what does this mean for us here in the Coachella Valley? So I'm going to walk you through that this evening. Next slide, please. I kind of wanted to do a first kind of a big picture in terms of where we are in terms of different water sources for the state, and more specifically Southern California in general. We started with the snowpack that's primarily in the Northern California area, and there's a bunch of reservoirs, state water projects, and aqueducts located throughout the state that basically delivers the water to the Southern California region. So this includes infrastructure like the Colorado River Aqueduct, that was built in the early 1900s, and it transports the water from the Colorado River to Southern California. And that's primarily operated by a Metropolitan Water District, which is a wholesaler water agency in the LA area. We have other infrastructure that includes the State Water Project that delivers water from the Northern Sierra. We have the Los Angeles Aqueduct that was built by Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And then you have kind of more specifically at the local level, local groundwater storage that's underneath in the aquifers, and then water recycling and conservation efforts. Next slide, please. So I kind of painted the big picture, kind of where the water comes from. But as we look more closely in terms of the Coachella Valley, there's certainly a lot of, no one agency works by themselves in terms of providing a reliable water supply here in the Valley. And so with that said, we actively collaborate and partner up with the various water agencies in the region to work on various plans. And the two have highlighted these planning documents. One is the 2022 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. The acronym is known as SIGMA. And essentially that looks at, requiring water agencies. It was due to legislation that was passed that requires water agencies to manage basins sustainably and to avoid overdraft of those basins. And then the second planning document that the water agencies collaborate on is also the Regional Urban Water Management Plan, which includes a water shortage contingency plan. And that is a document that you may have not heard as it relates to the drought. And I'll kind of elaborate on these plans, but I just kind of wanted to show you that there is certainly partnerships involved in what we do in terms of water supply and reliability. Next slide, please. So before I dive in, I just kind of wanted to familiarize all of you a water term that we often use to quantify water volume, and that is known as an acre foot. So for perspective, an acre foot is roughly about 326,000 gallons, or if you look at a football field, it's roughly about filling that football field a foot deep full of water. So just for perspective, I want to relay that with you, and I'll be using that term throughout the presentation. So next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of first start off with kind of a general takeaway. I had mentioned some of these regional plans that we have in place. And so when we talk about planning, we have to have metrics in place that kind of measures, is the region doing the right things to ensure that there is groundwater here in the Valley. And so this is a kind of takeaway in terms of our cumulative groundwater storage over the years. You'll see data from as early as the 1970s, and then there's a drastic drop in like 2009, and then it kind of goes back up starting from 2009 onwards. And we can say a lot of this uptick in groundwater storage, which is a good thing, is attributed to things that we do like with canal water replenishment, robust conservation efforts, and recycled water and that sort of thing. And so the other thing that we can attribute like higher water levels in the region is groundwater pumping has decreased and groundwater replenishment has increased. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So without getting too technical, I had mentioned that we look at water levels. And so one of the things that we look at as part of the requirements, we evaluate our water levels every year. So they call it a water year. So we look at it's from, I believe it's October through September. And this is the latest data showing, inflow. So that means water coming in and outflows water going out. And when you look at the difference, we have roughly an increase in groundwater storage of roughly 5,900 acre feet. So that's accounting for things of water flowing in and flowing out. And that's the delta right there, at least for this past year. Next slide, please. So when I talk about, regional collaboration, we look at from different angles. And so this is a very high level chart. It's a multi-pronged approach. And so they're kind of generally in 4 different categories. One of which is the most easiest, is water conservation, essentially using water more efficiently. We also look at water supply development. So that would be, constructing additional water reservoir sites and things of that nature. We look at source substitution replenishment. So that's essentially like developing alternative water sources like recycled water facilities, and we reduce groundwater pumping. And then lastly, we look at water quality protection, which is monitoring the water quality that we use and then making sure that that water quality is treated to the level that we can consider for potable use. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about how we use water, and certainly Coachella Valley, we certainly have quite a number of golf courses, but I want to take this opportunity to highlight that we use alternative water sources to irrigate golf courses. And so this is a very high level map showing that. So the areas highlighted in purple is using recycled water. Then you have this kind of a mint green looking color, and these are future canal water that we're planning to use regionally to help with irrigation. And then you see in the blue, that is the groundwater customer. So I just want to highlight that there's different water sources irrigating the golf courses in the valley. Next slide, please. So when you kind of hone in a little bit more, so this is more of Indio's service area, you will see within the city of Indio itself, there's alternate water sources that are being used. So this includes canal water, reclaimed or recycled water, and then there's future projects slotted to use alternative water sources. So I just kind of wanted to hone it down regionally and then specifically to the Indio service area. Next slide, please. So I had mentioned to you about, all these regional collaboration, all these projects. And so we also do a lot of modeling and forecasting to see, if these projects are going to yield some kind of impact, whether negative or positive, in terms of a water supply. And so what this chart basically shows is we run different scenarios. So this includes accounting for instances like climate change. And because of climate change, we may have to do cutbacks, right? Whether it's from the Colorado River, water supplies and things of that nature, and also accounting for capital projects, both ones that we have planned in the immediate future, midterm, and down the road. And so we run all these different scenarios and we coupled that with assuming certain dry conditions. This is what the modeling shows. And so what you see in the blue line is assuming, this is the baseline, meaning we don't do anything differently than what we're doing now. We keep things current and it's basically the status quo. And if we don't do anything further, you will see the projection is that the water levels go down slowly over time. The other lines are showing, well, if we continue our conservation efforts, if we continue to include our capital projects, which means either augmenting or identifying alternative water supplies, you will see that the water levels are actually going up. So I just want to say, even in the worst case scenario, which is the baseline, which is probably very unrealistic, which is the blue line, the water levels slowly go down, right? But with assuming all the other projects, which is the case, you will see our water levels going up or slated to go up. So I just wanted to share that with you in terms of perspective, like the impacts, based on the various projects, the various modeling that we have in play to show where we are in terms of valley, in terms of having a sustainable water supply. So next slide, please. So the other thing that's kind of high level, right? So there's that kind of planning. The other kind of planning that we do is kind of looking at, it's a plan that it's called the Urban Water Management Plan. We do it every 5 years. And like I mentioned before, we collaborate with the other water agencies. And with this specific plan, it's focused on something a little bit more specific, which is kind of looking at current water demands and then projecting the water use through at least year 2045. So we use essentially this information coupled with the modeling to kind of figure out where we're at in terms of water storage. So the plans work hand in hand. And so this particular plan also includes a component, which is, drought preparedness and drought planning. And so a part of it is called the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And so if I can have the next slide, please. So you may have heard on the news, water agencies are enacting stage 2 of the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And so this is essentially what the media or what you're hearing is all about is all water agencies have a water shortage contingency plan with varying stages from 1 all the way through 6. And when we're talking about level 6, it would be like disaster level, at the emergency water rationing and that sort of thing. And so the intention of a water shortage contingency plan is for water agencies to identify what measures need to be taken depending on a projected, whether it's anticipated or actual water shortage. And in this case, the water shortage is primarily driven by drought conditions and dry conditions. So a few months back in May, the governor had issued an executive order and essentially told all water agencies to look into enacting and declaring a stage 2, which is what we have that's currently in effect. But in addition to, and I've kind of listed out what these additional water use restrictions are. But addition to that, they also indicated for the no watering of non-functional turf. And when I say non-functional turf, I'm talking about areas that are like in the commercial, industrial, and institutional areas where we don't use it for recreational purposes. And so the way the stages work is as we advance through these stages, there will be an increasing number of water use restrictions, right? So before stage 2, it was always promoting like water use efficiently, timely repair your sprinkler heads, repair leaks and that sort of thing. And so now we're adding an extra element to it, some of which is, no outdoor water use, during daylight hours. So the intent is that watering during the night, right? So maximizing minimizing evaporation during the daytime and that sort of thing. And so I just kind of want to highlight that the intention of stage 2 is to kind of get us closer to where we need to be, which is, the governor's declaration was we all need to reduce our water usage by 15% compared to 2020 levels. So that's kind of how this is all kind of coming into play. Next slide, please. So in addition to like the water use restrictions, the Indio Water Authority also offers rebates to assist customers, whether it's rebates for smart irrigation controllers, turf removal, and indoor fixtures, which we have available, but also partnering up with, I mentioned, with the other water agencies. And we've established a group called CV Water Counts. We have a dedicated website that's specifically to promote water conservation, kind of like a one-stop shop that includes like a monthly newsletter on all things water related. And the intent here of CV Water Counts was actually established, just interesting fact, was established from the last drought back in 2015, when all the different agencies were having different water use regulations and the messaging was very confusing. So this was kind of a takeaway from the last drought, which is consistent messaging to the extent that we can throughout the region to minimize any confusion for any of our customers. And the other thing that in terms of a tool or resource for our water customers is the web portal, in which our system is tied to, I think it's advanced meter infrastructure, also known as AMI. So you can look at your water, log in, look at your water usage, sign up for any leak alerts. So it's a tool that we provide to our customers so they can monitor their water usage and just identify if and when there may be a leak, that they're notified of that. Next slide, please. So in short, kind of the general takeaways I wanted to, for the duration of this presentation, is just reiterate that we work with other water agencies in the region to ensure sustainable water supply, and that's by way of these long-term planning documents, modeling and accounting for the worst-case scenarios like drought conditions, climate change, and water cutbacks. And even with all of that said and done, at least for the most recent study that we've done to date, which measuring our groundwater storage, it showed a positive yield. So there's a positive amount between what we've used in the region and what has been stored. And then that we work regionally for conservation and programming. So that's kind of the takeaways. And if I can have the next slide, please. This concludes my presentation. If there are any questions from the commissioners, I'd be happy to answer. I think I do see a hand up. Did you want to ask your question? I'm sorry, I think you're on mute.
There you go.
I think she's on mute.
It looks on my screen, at least, that she's off mute. I think it may be a problem with your microphone, Anita.
Yeah, could be.
Michelle, that was a great presentation. You made it very
Can you hear me
simple.
now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thanks. Yeah, I was connected to panel and display, and I think that took away my mic capabilities. Okay, thanks very much, Michelle. I actually attended that CV Water Counts has a school.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
Yeah, it is 5 or 6 weeks long. And I attended it, and it was excellent. It was by all of the local water districts participated and did the school. And I came away from that, however, with a slightly different conclusion than watching your presentation. So at the school, I came away with the concept that we have this underground vault of these water. That's where we're getting most of our fresh water from, and it is in the long term sustainable because of this sustainable management plan that we have in effect. However, when I looked at your slide that had the trends, we have a business as usual scenario with volumes actually declining. Is that in spite of implementing the water management plan, or?
I can answer that. Yes. So to clarify, I believe the table you're talking about had like the 4 different lines.
Yeah.
And that blue line would be under the assumption that, with climate change and all of that, if we just kept status quo, if we didn't do anything more than what we're doing now,
right,
that water supply storage would eventually kind of, taper off and then start decreasing. So
okay.
I hope that clarified on that point.
Right. So, but we are going to be taking those other actions, and those are funded, or?
Yes. So that baseline is probably a very unrealistic, right? Baseline. And I think, all the water agencies are committed in terms of kind of the long-term planning. They look at 5-year capital projects and projects even beyond that, and even looking at climate change. And so that graph is intended to show the different lines. One was like, I believe it's 5-year capital projects and climate change would be one line. And then you have capital projects beyond the 5-year mark plus conservation, and that's another line. I think the third line that was showing increasing was like assuming there was an increase in agriculture and,
right,
and climate change and all of that. And that was the third line. And I'm glad you brought up about the CV Water Counts Academy, because that is something I think besides COVID during that 1 or 2 years, we've tried to just inform the community in terms of, where our water sources come from, and just kind of getting the outreach and education out there. And so that is something that we tend to continue on that front. And actually the presentations from the prior Academy sessions are actually posted available online if anyone is interested. So.
Yeah, it was great. One of the best voluntary things that I ever signed up for. It was highly informative. So thank you.
A very good presentation. Just to add a little note to that, over the years, what we've done, if you look at that chart, is we've tried to sign up for all the things that are above the blue line, and we continue to do those. And so as we go forward, as we look at each activity that goes on, there'll be other programs that we can take advantage of that will keep that blue line from going in the direction that's going. So if we do all the things that are in the future that we can do to conserve water, well, then that line will change.
Yeah, it makes us feel wealthy being here. I mean, it's so ironic, after attending that academy, I went about telling people, oh, we're in the desert, but we have water. You wouldn't believe it.
I think it's a very interesting story to tell, because one would
Yes.
think that in terms of water, it's a very dry area, but I think just in terms of how we're set up geographically, just geologically with the larger groundwater basin and all of these kind of, thinking ahead, big picture planning type projects has really put us in a good position, but that's not to say that conservation is still factored in. And so I think if anything, if in terms of what we all can do, that would be the easiest thing to do. It's probably the least expensive, right? I mean, in terms of just changing how we use our water and that sort of thing versus building infrastructure to do this, that, and the other. So I think it's a multitude of different things that get us to where we're now.
Good.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Michelle. Very well done, very informative. And I think you hit the nail on the head as you were speaking about the forward thinking of IWA in the city in terms of both implementing the policies that are coming down from the state and federal level in terms of conservation, but also educating the public as to how we can do our part in ensuring we're conserving this resource that we have in our region. A couple of questions I had, and one, excuse my ignorance on it. I know that typically the way that the basin is refilled is through percolation ponds, things along those lines. To whatever degree, is there any reclamation that happens from watering, let's say, a golf course? That most of it obviously is going to be used up, but I'm assuming some still seeps in. Do you know the percentage that does?
I unfortunately do not, but to your point, yes. So in terms of just the general process, like anything that we put through the ground, it may take a while, but it does eventually percolate back. And I certainly can tell you that for, there's different water qualities, right? So we have ones that were for treated for, for drinking purposes. And then when we recycle water, it will be treated to a different level because it's not going to be used for drinking. It might be used strictly for irrigation, but still within the confines of being relatively safe, so to speak. So I unfortunately do not have that answer to your question, but I'd be more than happy to look that up for you. And I can circle back on that in terms of for that.
Great. And the second question is regarding some of that treated water that you're referring to, the recycled water. Where does Indio stand in terms of recycled water facilities? And is there any plans to expand that? I know Mission Springs just broke ground at a new facility, so wondering where our city stands on that.
Yeah, some of the other water agencies. So just to a point of clarification, for Indio Water Authority, our water source is 100% groundwater. In terms of looking at like recycled water and that sort of thing, we are currently in the preliminary phases of Valley Sanitary District, doing feasibility studies of what it could look like in terms of treating that wastewater for percolation or injection and that sort of thing. But it's very early on right now. And I think at this point in time, that would be the one thing that's being considered. But again, it's in the feasibility state at this point.
Great, thank you.
No other questions? Okay, then I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Alrighty. We have the next agenda item. Sarah, should we move forward to that? Is
Yes.
6.2, and that is SB 1383, short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy update.
Yes. We'll pull up the presentation here and then we'll get started on that item. Okay. Just for background, the SB 1383 short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy is the new legislation, or fairly new legislation, that the state has put out to move organic waste out of landfills and into either compost or digestion, or to some, or even as edible food into some diversion. And they focused on organic waste because they found that about half of what Californians send to landfills is yard waste and food scraps and organic waste. And then also landfills are the third source in California of methane gas. And that's because when these organics go to a landfill, they create the methane gas, which is, according to CalRecycle, about 84 times stronger than carbon dioxide in heating the atmosphere. So on top of that, they also looked into being food waste, or some of it being food waste, what could be moved toward feeding people or animals or putting it to a better use than a landfill. And it checked all of those boxes. And so they made a pretty fierce legislation with many components to try and get those organics out of the landfill. And for good reasons. We do know that here, as climate change progresses, we're more in danger of more severe heat and longer heat periods, and also the same with drought, more drought, longer drought periods, and that they come back more frequently. So CalRecycle created a huge legislation, and they looked at a lot of components of moving organic waste. Where can you take it? Is there capacity to move it through processing? What happens if there's contamination? Who's going to kind of oversee all of this? And CalRecycle does the largest part of the enforcement or the moving the legislation along. But at the heart of it are jurisdictions, and cities throughout California are now responsible for all kinds of components of SB 1383, from monitoring to enforcement to education. And we have worked with our haulers for the most part, most cities, to have them do a lot of the footwork for this. But at the end of the day, it is the jurisdictions who are responsible to make sure all of this gets done and to do the reporting, and we're responsible for what gets reported. And cities can be fined for not moving the legislation and the programs along in a somewhat timely manner. In Indio, we have finalized, I think, what I would call the framework for moving 1383 along. We need to ask people to divert food waste, both residents and restaurants or businesses, all businesses that meet a certain requirement. But we also had to make sure that they had the services in place, and those services cost, of course, money. So we had to make sure that the rates were in place to pay for those services. And then we had to pull together an ordinance that allowed us to do a lot of the things that CalRecycle had written into 1383, so that we can make sure things are being monitored and that everyone who is now has service actually uses the service. So we finalized all of these things in June. So we have the backbone, and now we need to begin actually really rolling out, asking residents and businesses to start doing this. Businesses, we've been working on that outreach for quite some time. In a couple of months, because we have the ordinance together, we're going to businesses will have to have waste recycling and organics services. There will be a point in time near the end of the year where it won't matter whether the business signs up for the service. It will be added, and BirdTech will go out and speak with them and train them and help them to utilize the service correctly. But they will have to have it. For businesses right now, as we roll it out, we have the backbone. We're going to start the education. We have CV strategies working on some of the outreach now. That should be out very, very soon. We know that the rollout is, we know what we have to do. We have to educate, we have to do all of that, but we're trying to figure out how do we really help folks get started with this. And right now for businesses, we are offering the indoor containers, the green containers for organics. We also offer recycling containers. Any business can get these containers for free to help them get started on their projects. But businesses, their rates are based on service. So the more waste they have, the more cost. The more often a truck has to go by and pick up, no matter what it is, waste or recycling or anything else, then that the cost for their service goes up. For residents, the services are bundled. That was the best way we could keep the services, the cost as low as we could. So it's one it's one price. So if it's a reduction in waste doesn't necessarily help residents financially. We've already basically kept that as the costs as low as we can. And we did that through bundling rates. So as we start to move these programs out, what I really wanted to talk to you all tonight about an action item is how we might move forward with the commercial and with residents to roll this out and actually help them. One of the things that I came along was called True Certification. And what it is, it's a kind of a third-party zero waste certifying organization. It's managed by the Green Business Certification, which also oversees LEED certifications. So they're not new, and they understand a lot about keeping records and certifying certain different types of businesses and organizations. The True Certification is kind of this industry standard as the certification. There are others, but because this is managed by the Green Business Certification, and it's more thought of as the most, as probably the best certification that if to go with. To become zero waste certified under True Certification, you have to have at least a 90% diversion of non-hazardous solid waste from the landfill. They don't count incineration and of course the environment. So at the end of the day, business would have to ultimately reduce its waste by 90%. It has minimum program requirements. There are two parts to becoming certified under the True Certification. First, you have to meet all of the program requirements that you see on the screen here. And then there are about 100 different credits, and you have to have 31 to 37 credits out of this huge list on top of what you see on your screen here. So it's not a small undertaking. The things on the list, there's a lot of them that because of the laws in California with organics diversion, they'll already get those credits. So it is, when I looked into this, I felt like this is something that businesses might be able to do. Another thing that I really liked about the True Certification is that it has a very cut and dry cost system. So there's not a whole lot of confusion about what it's going to cost to become a zero waste certified facility. The registration fees are about $1,500. There's no need for the pre-certification fees. It's an optional. It's an optional way of being certified that would allow you the certification early if you're an organization that really needs that right away. And the expedited review fee is the same. It's $2,000 to have it a little quicker. But the base fee for basically any organization is $1,500, and then they put costs out by how large or how large your facility is ultimately in square feet. They count basements as well. If you're a 2-level facility, then it counts all the floors. But it has, you can work out your fee ahead of time and know what you're getting into. And then there are recertification fees every 3 years, which do also include paperwork as well, that so staff time and effort to make sure that you're still doing the things that you were certified for from the beginning. So what I really wanted to talk to you all tonight as an action item.
Sarah, I think we may have missed part of what you were saying there. Your microphone's going in and out.
Okay, and that's, you can take the presentation down if you would. I wanted to talk to you all about, as far as an action item, is looking further into a certification like this program. The idea being that for commercial facilities in Indio, a reduction in service could very well lead to a reduction in price for the new services that they literally have to have. And I think that this may be an opportunity to help our commercial facilities by helping them not just get certified, but to help with the costs of that certification, especially because with this program, we know the costs up front. But I wanted to talk to all of you commissioners about, one, the idea, and if you wanted to move forward with that, if one or two of you may be willing to work together in an ad hoc committee together to try and look into this a little further and decide whether this is something that that you as commissioners could support. So ultimately, two of you would work, and I would help as well if you like, but work to look into this more deeply and see if this is a program that could be rolled out in Indio, that you feel that could be rolled out in Indio, that you feel you could substantiate if we ever wanted to the city council about, why we're doing it or what good it could do. It's definitely a program building type of situation. It's not kitchen pails where we just hand them out. So there's quite a bit to it. If you're willing to kind of consider this more seriously, I could also bring back someone from economic development who has the relationships with the businesses, or they're working on building business relationships here, and they might be able to give a little bit of input as well. But that's the action item: is how do you feel about moving this forward, and about creating possibly an ad hoc committee to look at it more deeply?
Well, I think maybe Miguel, were you present when we talked about this last year?
I was not. I believe
Okay,
Anita and I joined on after.
let me give you a little bit of background. We discussed this. We've had very good success with using third-party vendors to manage our endeavors, and because of the uniqueness of this community, with the aquifer the way it is, and with the businesses spread out, and the only landfill we have, and all the things that we have that are unique to our little Indio community, it's always been our experience that if we go with a third-party vendor who can take the burden off, provide us all the details, give us the working mechanics to put this together, we've had pretty good success with that. So that's sort of the background of where we got into this situation. And in some of our other programs, we do the same thing, whether it's charging stations or whatever we do. So that's sort of the background of what we have been able to accomplish by using a third-party vendor. So I'm not necessarily able to commit to being on the ad hoc committee, but I am definitely 100% in favor of pursuing this as a way to make it easier for our businesses to comply, because this is going to be a tough situation. And it's going to take a lot of education. And we're very fortunate that we have a good relationship with Vertec that will step in and help us with this procedure. So between a third-party vendor and Vertec, we've got the best of both worlds if we decide to move forward in this direction. So my vote would be that we proceed forward.
I'd be happy to lend my time to an ad hoc committee.
Well, thanks, Pete. That would be very helpful.
Sure, yes, sir.
You'll learn as you see all the things that we've been able to accomplish in the years since we started this. And I guess to give you people who aren't necessarily used to this, I was one of the first commissioners when this thing got started day one. So before it was even created. So I have a little history of what we were able to do and how we were able to do it, and how we worked with Vertec, and to the point where we're at now. So that just might give you a little background or comfort level to know that I have been through this whole process. from day one.
Thank you for that.
Questions? So just kind of going back, so SB 1383, do we have in Indio a local ordinance governing this program? I have not looked.
Yes, we do. It is new. Every city now has one or is working on making one. That was
Okay.
part of the state requirements, is that cities would have to create an ordinance so that they could basically roll it out and at some point, if necessary, enforce contamination all the way to making sure that folks are using the services.
And
Yeah,
that would,
and yeah, just to share with you some of the nuances of this program is we have a real challenge when it comes to apartment complexes that have a dumpster and don't have individual cans. So there is no such thing as having an individual, because some of the municipalities that already have this in place, they have on the kitchen counter a small compost for organic food waste. And then you have a dispenser that has little plastic bags. You put it inside the container. And then as you fill that up, that gets filled, tied, and then put in the green can for once a week pickup. So we have a real challenge in doing multiple units and apartment complexes that have a dumpster system and do not have individual cans as we move forward. So just to let you know, there's some things that we've already discussed and that we've been trying to work on. And that's one of the things that's is a big issue.
okay, so the question related to this ordinance is, I'd like to get a copy of the ordinance, or is it, you said it's new, so is it final, or if you can give me the ordinance number, that's good enough.
I can send it to you. It's
Okay.
final.
And so does the ordinance, how does the ordinance relate to this program? Because does the ordinance have within it the option? I don't know what the compliance mechanism is in the ordinance, whether it would allow apartment complex or whatever to go with this zero waste certification, or do they have to do a report to Cal Recycle?
Right. The ordinance allows, or the ordinance basically rolls out the service to businesses. Therefore, all services or all businesses that meet a certain threshold, which is a very low threshold, so it's hard to meet that threshold, will have to have the services. So they'll pay for basic service for organics, recycling, and waste. The zero waste is completely outside of what the requirements for this 1383 is. It's a way that could help reduce the cost of these new services, because if you have less, then if the truck doesn't have to come by so many times, then you may be able to reduce the cost of basically your waste service overall. And also it's a big step for the city in sustainability toward zero waste. And I don't know that that's 1383 is necessarily has to be the catalyst for that, but it's an opportunity to, I think, take, because the baseline would be to help the businesses comply with these new regulations financially. That's the underlining goal of doing this.
Yeah, I have no opposition to helping on it. My only question is related to, and I'd have to obviously sit down and read the ordinance to see how they fold in and whether it would be practical from a business standpoint to, it sounds like a good, maybe it sounds like a good deal. I'm not sure, because we all want to get to the same endpoint, and there are many roads. There's a regulatory road, and then there's voluntary, and there's targets. So I'm not sure how it all folds together, but it certainly seems like a good tool as Commissioner Tack was saying. But if it can relieve, it sounds like a good tool if it can relieve the regulatory, I don't want to say burden, but the regulatory duty. That's probably a better word. So if it can relieve there has to be some incentive for doing this, because as you presented it, it sounded like a voluntary program, correct, Sarah? Okay.
Yes. It would be a program that we would offer and help with the cost to do, and hopefully to reduce the cost of waste service overall for what they'll have to do for SB 1383. But I agree with you. On the surface, it looks, I think, like very promising. But that's kind of what I would like the ad hoc committee to look a little further into, to see if this is really a good fit for supporting the rollout of, of 1383, because we have to roll it out. It's just a matter of, is this something that might be helpful? And if it is, then, if that's what the ad hoc committee determines and brings back, then we'll really look more toward moving forward with it.
Okay, I put myself as third string. If someone else wants to be number two, I'm fine. If Commissioner Romero wants to be number two, I'm fine. But other than that, I'll put myself as third string. Thank you, Sarah. Well researched as usual. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting proposal in terms of what it offers for the businesses. At first, as you were talking about the registration costs and all these other costs, I was having a hard time picturing why it would be beneficial for them to sign up. But as you're explaining that it will reduce how much they have to use the waste service, it makes sense. And especially if the city can step in, or another agency can step in and help support some of those costs for the certification, I think it makes a lot of sense. I would love to be a part of the ad hoc committee and help out the efforts there. I had to check my scheduling, so I should have an answer better for the next month. But if Vice Chair Lou and Commissioner Chris, I'm just sorry, having a hard time pronouncing that.
Chris, like the first name.
Chris, okay.
Yeah.
If Vice Chair Lou and Commissioner Chris want to start off on that, I'll be happy to join on if I'm available. And as far as some of the talks about SB 1383, Sarah, is there discussions about the city, BIRTEC, going into some of the schools and maybe doing some of that outreach for the residential portion of it? I know that a lot of times the kids are the ones that bring in some of these ideas home and help the parents try to navigate some of these changes. So I think that, especially as schools are starting to get back into session, might be a beneficial thing we can look into is doing some outreach along with BIRTEC in terms of what is the blue bin making now? What is the green bin? Why do you have this new tabletop container?
That's a really good idea. And when we wrote the new franchise agreement, we wrote some pretty prescriptive outreach avenues into that, but we did not write the schools specifically. It doesn't mean they're not, but I will talk to them. There's definitely room, and I think that's a really good idea.
Do we need a motion on this or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I believe that.
It's an action item, right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's an action item.
Exactly. So we'll have to put forward the first two commissioners for the committee and then vote on it.
Make a motion, we accept the first two commissioners on the ad hoc committee and move forward as discussed.
Second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. I have Commissioner Tack for the first and Commissioner Chris for the second. Vice Chair Lou?
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit lost on that. So we were making a motion?
Yes, we're going to move forward with the motion.
Okay. And
the motion is to move forward.
Okay. Yes, the motion is to move forward, and it was on the motion itself was the first and the second person for the ad hoc committee. And who did we have there for the first and the second?
Yes, that's the motion to move forward with those two members.
So it would be, I believe it was Commissioner Chris and Vice Chair Lou for now.
Okay, all right, just wanted to clarify that because Commissioner Romero was had mentioned checking his schedule, so.
Yeah, we just
Not
need to
sure.
vote on this. We just need to vote on this agenda item. So,
Okay.
so you can vote.
To move forward with implementing.
Yeah, we need a yes from you if that you agree.
Yes, I guess someone seconded the motion. So Commissioner Tack proposed it, someone seconded it. I will second the vote, and I'm assuming we can change it later if needs be. I second the vote and second the motion, sorry. So let's go ahead and vote on the motion.
Yeah, we have voted. We're just waiting for you to say yes.
Yes, okay, yes. So as everyone else said, yes,
Okay.
I'm completely lost here on this vote. Not sure what
You're
the motion
fine.
is, not
You're
sure where
fine.
we are.
Just say yes and we'll move forward.
Yes, let's move
Okay.
forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Romero,
Yes.
Commissioner Tack,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris,
Yes,
and the motion
Right.
passes.
thank you.
Alrighty, and that takes us to agenda item number 8, which is staff items. So that goes to Sarah.
Yes, and actually I don't have any items under number 8 tonight.
Okay, that is good. So that moves us to our last item, which is the adjournment of the meeting. And so I move that we adjourn the meeting. Does anyone second that?
I'll second that motion.
There you go.
Alrighty. So with that, we adjourn the meeting of the Sustainability Commission for today, July 20.
Yeah. Are we going to have a meeting in August? Sarah?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, do you have a date yet?
It is August. Twenty-second.
Thank you,
Would
Sarah.
it be the 29th?
22nd.
Okay, alrighty. Well, with that, August 22nd is the next date we'll look for a meeting invitation for Sarah for our next meeting.
Yeah.
And we can go ahead and close for tonight.
Yes.
Thanks, Sarah, for a very good presentation for this afternoon's meeting. Thank you.
Yes, and if I
Thank
may,
you.
thank you all for being so welcoming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for jumping in there.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.